I'll move to approve the agenda as written.
I have a motion on the table by Trustee Teeman to approve the agenda as written. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second by Trustee Mitchell. Do I have any further discussion?
I have a question, point of order. On the reappointment, shouldn't this be under discussion action items? Normally the mayor would make the nomination, the council would approve, confirm.
On that one, Jeff?
Really doesn't make any difference, it's on the agenda.
Because on the police chief and clerk, when I first became mayor, I made the appointments.
And then confirmed by the council.
I think we confirmed them later. So we're
Same,
gonna have
same
to,
meeting, yes, we confirmed.
well, that wasn't in a meeting when I did that. Jenny, do you have any recollection on that one?
Normally after the mayoral elections, or they have the reorganizational meeting, and the board members and employees are reaffirmed.
Okay. So that's normally after the election of the mayor.
Barbara may have some
And the
different
board
guidance.
members and the clerk, the administrator, and the chief of police was all we did.
Yeah.
That's the only thing.
I was gonna say, that's all under you, chief,
Yeah.
police,
Right.
clerk.
Yeah,
I would think that the fire chief would be the same time as a normal basis. But I'm sorry I didn't confirm you then. I was learning everything day by day when I took over this position. We can put it on the agenda for next meeting to confirm, but I can appoint him tonight, according to this agenda. But y'all can vote to confirm. If
Mayors nominate, they don't appoint, they nominate, and then the confirmation is by the council.
All right. And anything else on the agenda? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, announcements and discussions. Okay, I do have some announcements. I checked the wrong box. Next thing on the agenda is the approval of minutes. We have two sets of minutes here. One is the regular meeting of the governing body of October 12th, 2021. And then the special meeting of the governing body from October 26th, 2021. I can take a motion on one or both, or however would y'all like to proceed?
Yeah, I had a question on the October 12th minutes. When we were going over the cannabis regulation, in our minutes, it states the trustee was advised by the village attorney. Just a point of clarification. Jeff, you are still our village attorney, are you?
Until I'm not certain.
Okay.
I serve until I'm replaced.
That's how I understood it.
Yeah.
But I wanted to clarify that.
And that applies to any officer,
Excuse me.
or employee, any officer employee that needs to be appointed, is appointed until their successor.
Yes. Until there's a replacement, you are what you are, okay. I make a motion to accept the minutes,
Both or one?
both.
Okay, I have a motion on the table to approve the approval of the minutes for both October 12th and October 26th meetings as written. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Trustee Mitchell. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Announcements, discussions, mayor's announcements. Okay, we do have a public hearing on November 16th, that'd be next Tuesday, at 5 PM. And it is a request to zone 202 and 204 James Canyon Highway as a C7, which is a vehicle fueling station. And it is presented by Justin and Marianne Munoz. That is in conjunction with Alsos. That's where they're doing some changing and growing down there. So anybody interested in that, that's at 5 o'clock next Tuesday. And next one is the priority on the ICIP. We discussed this in our work session on Saturday. We didn't actually discuss it, I just announced it. The Henshaw property, the one that we were looking at for all the good water rights that we put at the top of the ICIP is currently under contract. So that one is, as far as we can tell, off the table. So we can't really push it for the number one item. I think we can't readjust now. So it's still the number one item, but when we discuss it with the legislature, we need to probably push the number 2, number 3, 4, and 5, move those up.
Mayor,
Yes,
may I have an update
okay,
on the ICIP? I have received email from Maureen, she heads up the ICIP for the state. I told her about that project not being an option anymore, and she said what we can do is deactivate that project and just move the other projects up.
Okay.
So the law enforcement complex system would be one, and then all the ones, we would just deactivate that one and everything.
so we would just have the 4 for the top,
No, you would have 5. And
so
what
we
that
would move that one
is,
altogether.
so now your top 5 are going to be the emergency services complex, heavy equipment, water line replacement, the storm water control improvements, and the new water well. So the land acquisition for water source came off.
Okay.
That one came off, and then
It'll just move everything up, but we can't change them.
no, sir.
Why can't land acquisition stay, because there's other property?
That's kind of what I was thinking.
Because whenever we entered the project summaries into the system, you have to be specific. You have to know, that you have to tell them what it is, what property you want to purchase, what kind of, even I had to name what kind of equipment we wanted to purchase. You have to be a specific, tangible project.
So, next time we see a property, what we need to do is make an offer on the property subject to.
Yes.
Instead of just promoting the property and somebody else buying it out from others.
We need to do something definitely different than this. Because I don't know what if we can make an offer on something that we don't have the money. That's catch-22s.
A potential seller would sit on a maybe.
Right.
Mayor, if I may, I'll pass out the packets for the public hearing, so you all can start
Yes.
preparing for that.
Absolutely.
So this is the packet for next Tuesday.
So if any of y'all know any good properties near Cloudcroft that has a lot of water, I would love it if you would share them with us. Especially if somebody wants to sell it. Okay, the next thing on there is, and this was on the agenda about 3 months ago, but it kind of came to me without any knowledge, so I bounced it out. But we've got the reappointment for Eric Wershing as fire chief and Jubal Hall as the deputy fire chief. So I wanted to appoint Eric and Jubal to those positions, and then we'll have it on the agenda for next month for the council to confirm that. Okay? And what is the process on that as far as, is there any paperwork or pictures or handshakes or?
I went back through the oaths of office and you guys, back into the 90s, I can't find any oaths of office for y'all, so.
I've never done an oath of
Yeah.
office.
Okay.
Just just always been a.
So I just need to state it in an open meeting that I am appointing Jubal Hall and Eric Wershing. Eric Wershing as the fire chief and Jubal as the deputy fire chief. And we'll have a vote on the affirmation of my appointment next meeting. Congratulations. All right. We are moving on. Jim stole my agenda again. Okay. Report Ski Cloudcraft report. We all have it in front of us. Anybody have us, Michael in the audience there?
I forgot to add one bit. Every 7 years you have to do a load test, which you load the lift, chairlift to 110% capacity, and you pull it with the electric motor and then your auxiliary motor in case your power goes out. And then you also have to check each and every brake individually. There's 5 brakes. At any one time, a minimum of 2 brakes are engaged when you stop a lift, whether it's a normal stop or emergency. So every 7 years you have to check them individually, and it's kind of terrifying as the people that own the lift, but it's great for the public to know. All of that went really well. Each and every brake by itself held the lift, so.
So the lift is still in good operating condition.
I'm really glad to hear that, because I think that pretty well.
So, since Dave Swope is not running the concrete plant anymore, what'd you use for dead weight? Citizens or?
No, a few years ago they recommended you start using boxes, just a regular cardboard box from Lowe's, and then a contractor bag, and then you fill them. Each chair had 340 pounds of water in it, which there's kind of talks among the industry that as America gets a little bigger in the
I was gonna
baseline,
say, is that really a accurate test?
but yeah, it's loaded to 110% capacity, and then you pull it off the electric motor, and then again off the auxiliary motor, and then you literally disengage or tie up the manual stops and test each and every brake. So
Huh? Great. That's good news.
it's an old lift. It's still in really good shape. Our inspector, he's really happy and loves that little mountain in the lift. So
Cool.
Your job's to get some snow out there so we can run it.
we're getting lots of calls, so we just need the snow now.
All right. Any other questions for 32 degrees north? All right. Treasurer's report.
This is where I get to say, sorry, I was working with the auditors today and I intended on fixing this, but a couple of your true cash balances are off, because my summation is wrong. So, the majority of them, if you skip down to 330 and 335, you'll see them in the negative. They're not negative. Basically, if you look at the 335, there's actually $893,000 sitting in there. We've moved over the $80,000 that the village requested be moved to match the 820. So there's $900,000 budgeted in there, and we've spent 6,000 of it, so it should be sitting at like 893. There's a couple that I need to go in and tweak, but that'll be fixed, and then I'll just shoot you it in an email. And then the other one thing that I do need to bring to y'all's attention, and Jenny and I are going to look at this tomorrow. In the July 20th special meeting, you guys had approved an overage of $23,616, I think is what I said. On the senior center project, CDGB is coming back and asking us to show where, which I can show them the minutes, that you approved moving the $23,616. You did not tell me where to move those funds from, and that reflects in the minutes. But CDGB has it, we're going to move $29,000. So Jenny and I are going to go back and look tomorrow to find out where that additional $6,000 is coming into play for CDGB. And then I would still like direction, it can be in the December meeting, I suppose, where you want to bring those funds from to complete that project.
Is that project moving along?
It is, we ran into, and Jubal can maybe talk briefly about it, we ran into some utility,
We had some issues down with the sewer lines. We didn't realize a few of the residents' sewer lines ran directly underneath the new addition. So we had to completely reroute the sewer lines around the new addition and reconnect them into the sewer main.
Yeah.
But other than that, they got the compaction, all their backfill's done now. They got the inside, probably about 75% demolished, demoed out, so. They weren't here today, so I imagine they'll probably be here tomorrow.
Well, that sewer line issue, that's probably the first time you've run into that cloud problem.
Yeah, that was our first time.
Never-ending battle. All right. Anything else from our treasurer?
No.
Any questions for our treasurer? All right. Okay, judicial, police, library, Wells Springs, water usage, production.
I'd like to make a comment on the water production
Yes.
in the building. I had that. It seems like we're getting a better handle on known lossage, and that's getting to be a lot, what would I say, encouraging. I think everybody's worked really hard on that.
Yes, and that's the first billing cycle going into the new billing system, new billing software. So we didn't have as many discrepancies as we've had over the years with RMS.
It's a little easier to read and I think it's cleaner.
Well, I particularly like the explanation of the explained loss and the unknown loss, That number's,
What was it, 16,000 gallons
Yeah.
was unknown? Or?
16,000 and just under 500. That helps to get a better handle on the operation,
So it does.
To help us all understand.
I noticed we didn't have the list of meters and consumption that's usually in this packet. Is that an oversight or something, or? Usually shows us how many meters have how many gallons. I didn't see that in this packet.
We can see if there's an additional report to put with it.
That it can, it does list out, the meter, how many meters and the sizes of them on the sidebar.
So a lot of it's the new format from the new software.
So it shows us total meters and doesn't know gallons that are running through them. That's a pretty good picture if we get that added back in.
Wouldn't that be under bill meter consumption?
But it would break it out individually.
How many are using how much gallons?
Okay, as far as size meters.
Yeah.
Okay. I got you.
Which was, we always had that. See if you would, please.
All right. EMS, fire, maintenance, lodger's tax, check register.
Lodger's tax is up pretty good.
We're going to exceed the last several years,
Yep.
according to what I'm reading.
Yep.
And the gross receipts tax is pretty awesome too.
I wanted to compliment Jubal on this. When you show us your day, kind of your day labor report, that's real good. Shows where you were and what's going on.
And it gives a good idea of what all they do in a day, doesn't it?
It's a busy day.
Oh, yeah.
How much of your day do you have to dedicate to doing a summary each day? Half hour? Hour?
About an hour each morning.
Thank you guys for that report. There's 5 hours lost each day. You want potholes fixed, you want, maybe we could get each man to write a report. And then that way we could burn up a lot of hours.
But those are on before I even clock in.
Read.
Those are not on top, those are not on the clock. I go in an hour over the 2 minutes.
No, that wouldn't.
All right, we have a motion to accept the reports. That's what I'm asking.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we accept the reports as presented.
I have a motion on the table to accept reports as presented. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second by Trustee Teeman. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Don't have anything on unfinished business. Under new business, we have some questions concerning the new cannabis ordinance. Matt Willett, you may have the floor, sir.
Thank you guys for having me. I'll pass these out, might give you a visual as to better understand.
Thank you, man. I will.
So you want?
Oh, sure, thank you.
Okay, so I have a few items on the cannabis ordinance that I would like to open for discussion in hopes of getting clarification on the property that myself and a partner of mine, John Ballard, own together, and then even to propose some potential amendments to it. So I don't know if you guys have the ordinance in front of you. I'm sure you're familiar with it, probably more so than I am. But I'm referring to specifically section 3-8-6 under land use controls, Part C, distribution of cannabis, and then under rule number 2, basically the gist of the rule is that the facility needs to be 100 feet or more away from a school. So the wording in this section was presumably drafted with the intent of distancing cannabis establishments from Calcraft High School, middle school, and elementary school. And that's to eliminate the exposure of the cannabis industry or whatever to those kids. And I fully understand that, and that's not arguable to me. At the time of this ordinance was being drafted, were any of you guys, trustees or mayor, aware of Burton Learning Systems?
Jim did bring it up in a meeting or two and asked if it was a school. And I don't know that we ever gave him an answer because we didn't know much about it.
So that's one of the points I'm trying to clarify this evening. The proposed property, if you look on that handout that I gave you, if you will look at kind of the upper, just left of the middle, you'll see the Burton Learning System building there. And the property that we're speaking of it says Ocean Trail Commercial. And so that, some people call it the apartments. We've basically been refurbishing those. We bought those as a repo back from the bank about a year ago. So anyway, we're doing a massive remodel and refurbish on that. So anyway, you've got a reference there. So the Burton Learning System, is it a school? By definition, what I've read of the state, it seemed to me like it would qualify as a school. I don't know. You guys can make your own decision on that. So we've spent considerable time and money for this property to use it as a cannabis retail operation. As it stands right now, we sit property line to property line 135 feet. So we're 15 feet shy. We have talked to Burton Learning Systems. The owners are in full support of us doing that. I feel 99.9% sure that they would give us a letter stating such. My main problem, my number one problem with the ordinance is there is no allowance for that in there. So for example, if when Dave's Cafe decided they wanted to do beer, the church was able to give them a letter that said, hey, we don't care, do what you want, because it was in that 300-foot zone. So there's no allowance for that in the ordinance, which I would like to see, because like I said, they're wholeheartedly for us doing that type of business. And then that property, I don't know if you guys know the apartments that I'm speaking of that we're doing. So it's kind of down, offset off the road. It's got its own parking. From Burton Learning Systems, you can't see that property one bit. So it's, I mean, there's a wall back there. They've got a door they could probably look out, but there's no access to the back of that property. So in reality, they can't, you know, by the letter or by the intent of the ordinance that you wrote to keep this out of the visual arena of any school-age kids, then we fall into that arena for sure, because you can't see it. In fact, it's about a 3-block walk around to get to there, and it's pretty walled off the whole way. So you can't see it. It's quite a long walk to it. Again, we're at 135 feet. So if you were measuring from property line to property. So our location, we feel, it's sensitive to the students. It's also sensitive, I mean, I've been in business 25 years on Borough Street, and we've got a conservative crowd that we like to cater to, and we appreciate kind of that conservative mentality. So I personally don't want Cloudcroft to just look like some giant pot town, you know what I mean? So with our building, we are off-street. The mayor stated that he wanted to kind of stay in the business district downtown, so we do fit that bill. We have our own parking. I feel like it's an ideal location because it's not right there in your face. We're not going to rely on signage to get people there. I mean, if they're coming to Cloudcroft to find that, they'll find it. Google Maps does a pretty good job of getting everybody where they need to go. So, first of all, I'd like to have the ability for that school to be able to write a letter that kind of just gets rid of their ability to object to that. And then also within the intent, if you look at there's a line that says 186. And so that's basically going from the Cloudcroft High School property to, I believe it's 506 Borough. It's what used to be Two Bears, Nita Lane's place. So that place is for sale. It's within the 150-foot range, yet you can see it from the property of the high school. So, you know, that doesn't fall in the intent of your ordinance. But it does fall within the rule of the ordinance. So, in the ordinance, it does state, no variance for land use as specified in this section shall be considered or granted by the village. To my knowledge, this is the only ordinance I've ever seen of or heard of that has a no variance clause in there.
Where is that one at, Matt?
It is, you have the ordinance there?
Yes.
Page 4.
I found it.
Okay. So I don't know what the motivation for not having any variances. It seems like as a governing body, you guys should be able to say, hey, this makes sense. You're obviously not going to see every situation. As a guy going into business, I'm going to dissect it 1,000 times more than you are. So to not have that allowance for a variance seems to be, you know, I just don't know what the motivation for that is, because you guys have the final say. I don't know if there's anything I'm missing here. Bottom line is, if by the intent, go ahead.
This is fine.
That is, so I also own that building, which used to be Gail's doctor's office. And we, at one point that was where we were going to put it originally, was in that spot. But
What's the distance between that and the others?
that's like 108 feet or something like that.
Well, for my part, you know, this is kind of a new classification. We're kind of, trying to pair it to some of our zoning laws and such. You know, and I'm glad you pointed that out, that we didn't make that room for any variance in there, and maybe we had thought of that. Sorry, not prepared very well. I didn't bring my ordinance with because I didn't, since we'd already published my title and subject matter. But that's not fair to you. So I think that those are good considerations. I mean, it can be amended, you know, it can be done.
Yeah, and that's basically what I'm asking for, even if there was a clause in there, you don't have it in front of you, but where it states the distance from this, if you could just say, unless licensee obtains written permission from school owner or school administrator or whatever body is in charge of that.
We use Jeff to talk pretty for us.
Yeah, I'd rather him do it than me.
I certainly can see, you know, I think when we were talking about that, one of the board members on that, you know, it's really, and that people can agree or don't agree, it's really a psychological thing, you know. We don't allow people to peddle beer to the kids down there, you know, and stuff. So the footage thing really to me is, you know, probably don't want it right next door, you know, we might have, you know, but we're not going to allow a cannabis shop, you know, to, you know, be around the children and stuff, you know, we didn't.
Yeah, and I fully agree with that, and that's why we thought our location was ideal, because it wasn't just right in your face.
Yeah.
But by the intent, we're out of sight, out of mind, but by the letter of what was written, you know, that we're 15 feet away from that. So could you change it to a front door to front door? Right now, the measurement is property line to property line. You guys can do whatever you want, but.
Actually, that's not true. If you look at the Cannabis Control Act, they talk about licensed premises. In other words, you can have a larger piece of land and only a part of it is licensed. That's where we go. The only time under the Cannabis Control Act passed by the state that the entire property becomes a part of the licensed premises is if you're growing outdoors. If you're growing in a building, that's fine, but it's the licensed premises.
Okay, so in that vein, so property line to property line is 135, but the actual establishment is another 40 feet over. That's the licensed area, that's the footprint.
That's the licensed premises. You don't have to.
Property line to property line.
And this is going to depend on what you get in your application to the state.
Without splitting that property off and re-subdividing?
Doesn't say that.
Okay.
I mean, if you look at the Cannabis Control Act, it talks about licensed premise, period.
Yeah, there's a lot of language in there about.
Licensed facility.
Right.
So if you have a larger piece of land, you can locate the licensed facility on any part of that land you want to. And that's where the measurement goes to under the Cannabis Control Act.
Well, then you guys would have to
That
change.
governs us.
Right. Well, but in yours, it says 100 feet from any property which is school measured in a direct line from property line to property line that is in existence when the cannabis retail establishment is first licensed. So there is property line to property line verbiage in here.
Shouldn't be in there.
Okay.
That's simple.
So
I
we
mean,
need to.
you know,
All right. We're new at it.
all right, what the Cannabis Control Act does is give you the authority to basically regulate the location of the licensed facility. And you can make that 100 feet, you can make it 2 feet, you can do, I mean, there's no constriction under the Cannabis Control Act as to how you do it, as determined by the bill.
So the way we wrote it, property line,
That's okay. You don't have to do that. You can change the wording of that to say licensed facility or, and
structure.
licensed facility, because that's what the state is going to be looking at.
So that's the external footprint of that licensed facility then? Is that how, or is it to the front door, or is
Like I
it?
say, the property line language is not in the Cannabis Control Act. It's okay for us to do that, but we don't have to do that.
Right.
We can change the number, we can change line, we could change it to licensed facility. That's what was interesting. That was
Could
what
we
was
change it to entry point to entry point?
Good.
Because that would make more sense.
Yeah, I mean,
Yes.
there,
I mean,
Only thing about that, your entry points can change through the building use. Like, if you say one remodel, all of a sudden now, it's not complying again. Matt and I are partners in the brewery, and so I always want to make sure we disclose any relationship I have. We went through about 3 months of discussion on this, man. And that's when, to me, your comments should have come forward, because we were struggling with it. It wasn't easy. We spent a lot of time trying to write this, where the state would have let us go 300 feet as a distance. We thought, well, it's such a small town, that would mean there's nowhere that you can get permitted. So we didn't want that. In fact, the ordinance or the act doesn't allow us to create a set of situations that would exclude the right of somebody to open these stores. So we tried to struggle with that. The property line to property line was because we don't know it's going to be built on the land.
historically, that's what you've done on any
Right.
kind of zoning question. This really is not a zoning question. It's something entirely different.
Now, it's a new industry. We had very limited choices in what the act allowed the village to even consider. And so when we wrote it, I mean, we know it's a new industry to consider. And so these were the choices we made. I mean, that's how it is today. So we have to go back into a rewrite. It's not.
I mean, that was one of the things we talked about when we passed it, is we could make alterations of it if we find problems.
There's no definition of school in the cannabis control act.
Correct. That's why they.
We said learning center.
They let us define what a school was.
Yes.
Did we put in the ordinance that variance was not allowed under any circumstance?
I do not remember putting that in, but that is in there.
If it's in there,
No, we
then we
did.
don't have but one choice to fix this then. And to go back and rescind the original ordinance and rewrite it to a shorter distance. And that would be in essence a variance.
Yeah.
By changing
Petition
the
for
distance
variance.
from 135, just say 100 feet.
You're really not rescinding it. You can amend it.
Amend it.
Amend it.
I mean,
The original ordinance stays in effect. There'll be another ordinance with a different name. And you can do it by changing the distance. You can do it by changing the point at which you measure. Or, if you wanted to just leave it the way it is, you put in licensed facility. But that might not accommodate everybody.
No, then you have to determine the licensed facility to what? The perimeter of the school, or the borderline of the school, or the school building?
In our liquor permit, we have a serving area, which is what the liquor control guys want to know. So your property line is one thing, but they really want, where are you going to serve liquor? To me, retail cannabis is a similar thought process. Like, okay, where is this act going to happen? And so it could be answered that way also, where your retail, what is your retail store as compared to maybe some other use of the building?
Yes.
Zoning is on this piece right now,
On,
or is that gonna have to require spot zoning?
on the Ocean Trail Commune?
No, where he's talking about having the business.
Yeah,
Yeah, the Ocean Trail, it's not commune, is it?
No,
It's commercial.
commercial.
That sounds better.
Bad
So
appreciation.
you're talking about zoning on the proposed property that we're talking about. So it has C1 through C9, and then it also has R1 and R2 for some reason.
It does.
so it has from C2 to 9, any of those Cs?
For a retail establishment, it has to be C2 or 3, according to the ordinance.
No, what I'm saying is that it's zoned right now.
It's zoned C1, C3, all the way up to 9.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify So it is owned property.
Correct.
Comment again, I think
Yes, sir.
we should leave it property line to property line, because you never know where the school's gonna be located, or where the operating facility's gonna be located within the property. So to cover all situations, I think it should be property line to property line, but we might wanna consider adjusting the distance, that's all.
Okay, the reason that the property line to property line sits weird with me, and is because if you actually go to that property line, even walking, you cannot physically walk 135 feet and get to the school.
No, you can't.
Because there's buildings, there's private land, and there's a cliff.
Well, this is just because.
And then you're at the back of the building.
This
But
learning.
the ordinance doesn't say that. It says
I know, that's-
property line to property line.
So at the next
Not
meeting,
a
we
record.
want to amend that to 100 feet?
That is up to y'all. The one thing I would like to amend, if we amend anything on here, is the no variance part. I don't think we can definitely say no,
Yeah, that,
especially on something this new.
yeah,
I mean, the
Well, we
variance
do it-
should not be easy.
no,
They should definitely never be easy, but, I hate to deal in absolutes.
yes. Okay.
Obviously, the 100-foot sounds great to me, that solves my issue. And I don't think, if you look at the businesses around town, if you look at anything 100 feet, there's nothing available really. I mean, if you go and look at what is available, the one that's available is 180 feet, it is in the line of sight of the school, so.
I think really what we're trying to avoid was the old Cook Shack property. We don't really want
Sure.
a cannabis store right next to the entrance of the school.
But that's even within, that's gotta be less than 100 feet.
I would think so. Yes, but
We just spent a lot of time on this.
Well, yeah, but we also said in those meetings that we'd probably have to make amendments,
Well, in the state, they allow variances in their regulation. There's a section of variances allowed, and their comment period just ended in October. So this is a new thing, and again, I'm bringing up stuff that you guys would never thought of, or why would that even be on your radar? So, that wouldn't expect you to even think of this situation.
correct.
So we'll need to spend some time looking at the state variance, and then, we don't want to change this every month.
No.
But so is that another workshop, or?
I mean, if you change it to 100 feet and allow variances, that's said and done, or don't have to go back and revisit this.
Well, there was a couple little things on here that doesn't really have to do with Matt, but the single sign on H signage, I thought the signage had to match the rest of the
Well,
village
in our
signage.
comments said it was good, when you applied for that, you would get back and address signage,
But it seemed like it'd be the same as any other store.
We
I
tried
thought we
to
commented.
get that deleted before we accepted this, because we were treating cannabis differently than other businesses.
Right.
And it was still in the text.
So at the state level, they were trying to make it where you couldn't treat.
Right,
Right.
We're
exactly.
supposed to treat it like any other
Right.
business.
So that's where the variance, every other business has a variance allowance in there.
The variance thing bothers me, the signage thing I don't know about.
So the state
And then-
specifically says prohibit, or you cannot prohibit or limit signage identifying a business as a cannabis establishment if it's attached to or located on the business premise.
But we can regulate its size.
Like your sign ordinance, that's applicable to everybody else.
Anybody else's sign. So if he puts his shop up, he's got to do the same signage laws that the Western Bar does, or the Dave's Cafe
And
does.
what I read today of the New Mexico law, that says you can do that. Perfectly legal.
To,
Do whatever signage you're doing, every other business in town, you can do the same thing to the cannabis stuff.
that's what it sounds like in all the workshops I was in. You just can't make it any stricter than what the rest of the signs are.
Well, I would agree with Jim, we don't want to be, but, maybe we will be altering it every month for a few months till we
get it right.
address issues and stuff, so.
There was another thing in there, and I'm doing it from memory, I didn't bring the whole act with me, but once a premises is licensed, you can't change your ordinance later and have them move.
Correct.
So that'd be grandfathered in. So I good points. It's, they're not addressed in the ordinance. I mean, they're not allowed, so it's,
And another one, unless I don't have the latest and greatest ordinance,
virgin.
on hours of operation, we still have 7 AM and midnight. And in our minutes, we have on there to change that to match the state's alcohol package sales.
Is that how we stated it?
That's how we stated it in the minutes, but that way if the state legislature changes their mind, it adjusts the cannabis.
Jeff's comment, we talked about that before we adopted this, and he said these hours were more restrictive than the
Right.
package store liquor that we talked about. So it was, that was another point, it's like, is that what we wanted? Because I thought we had said we were gonna match whatever the state package, and that comment was that, well, these are more restrictive. So, that's in our, in fact, that's in the minutes of what we just approved.
Right.
If you read them verbatim. So again, that's about that's at least four different items that come up in tonight's discussion. So,
do we want to adjust this and address it next meeting? Do we want to do a work session to adjust it and then bring it up to the next meeting?
Can we, well, we're already gonna have a work session
We are.
tomorrow.
17.
A week from tomorrow. A week from tomorrow.
All right, I will look at my phone, but we got two people said so. All right. So,
And the only thing on that one is I think we were working on the rates for
right,
the water, and we were working, if we had extra time, we were working on the disconnect charges.
right.
And we could try to throw this in there.
Well, I mean, how much time is it really gonna require?
I don't know. If we could give it to Jeff, could he make some adjustments for a week from
Tell
now?
me what you're looking for. I
Well, at least a variance.
I would like to take
Yeah,
the
we'll
no off of the variance. And
can clarify the sign and make sure that it's the same signage as.
You got just some
Yeah.
signage, all it needs to do is stay compliant with.
I can clarify that. Want to change the distance?
do we want to change the distance to
Yep.
100?
Okay.
That's a consensus, Jim?
And, I mean, they're kind of arbitrary, you know, like, okay, when does this happen? Or now if somebody else comes in and says, well, hey, I need it to be 50 feet, you know, that's,
Yeah, the variance.
I think that's where the variance will come into play, and we'll be able to look at it case by case. Right here, I mean, I'm looking at the property, I don't really, it has nothing to do with Matt, but looking at the property, thinking we are going to get cannabis sales in this town, I can't really picture much better of a place. You know, it's easily accessible to everybody, but it's not in your face.
It's not an eyesore.
with your 100 feet, it's gonna open up half a dozen other properties also. So as long as you're aware.
Yes, it would.
And on the hours, you want to literally tie it to whatever the state is doing.
Well, then at the state, my thinking, you know, I just want to vote, but it's, my thinking was that as the state makes its adjustments, like it's just redone the liquor license, then we don't have to rewrite this. We just-
And I don't think that's a statutory thing of the state, it's a regulatory regulation, created by the Alcohol and Gaming Commission. I don't think it's in the statutes, I don't recall ever seeing it.
But if we tie it to it, then we just constantly go with it.
Whatever the state allows in terms of hours of operation
For a package.
For package.
package store.
Which again is trying to treat it similar to other businesses. These are always different businesses, but this is very similar. That was our goal, I think.
I'll have it draft.
Perfect. And then we can have it on the, I don't know if we need another special meeting, we can just have it on the December meeting. Okay?
Yeah, if it gets passed by December, that allows us to do
Well,
all the licensing with the state.
If you're gonna, one more point, if you're gonna consider a variance, you have to write the method of a variance for this
you know, the logical thing to do is to use the same standard that you use for zoning, usual. Like I say, if there's a cliff there and there's literally no real connection and they're 15 feet apart.
So just pick it up out of another, the language out of another ordinance.
Yeah, the language that you use that
For
allows variances because of uneven size,
Or
shape, that's it.
Okay. Y'all have anything else? Mr. Willett, do you have anything else?
No, sir.
Okay.
Thank you guys for your time.
Thank you very much.
Can I keep this picture?
Yes. All you.
I gotta find the agenda again. Jim keeps hiding it from me.
It's on the screen.
It's on the very front, okay. Okay, the next thing on the agenda is questions, update, request concerning the recreational grant and the multi-use facility with Mr. Tom Taylor. Mr. Taylor, you may have the floor, sir.
Thank you. I just had a few questions about it. I assume that the hockey rink is still an ongoing project?
Okay, if you would like, I do have an update if you want me to start it, and then you can ask.
All right.
Because as soon as you stated that, I thought, hey, I haven't given an update in a while. And Jimmy just printed one out for me, and I gotta find it. Jim's hiding everything from me. Okay. He did, he took it. Okay, we put out a request for proposal for the professional architectural design services for the ice rink / multi-use facility. The RFP was awarded to ASA Architects. Are you familiar with them?
They're in Cruces, aren't they?
They are, well, they're the ones that did they're working on the bus barn right now.
Okay.
They've done the elementary roof, they've done several things at the school, so they are familiar with Top Cup. They are in Cruces. The architect services will be paid for out of the general fund. That was part of the money that we moved over. The services ASA they're providing us a schematic design development for the scope of work. So the scope of work that they're looking at is to remove the existing building and replace it with approximately a 230 by 136 steel pavilion and provide an open air pavilion to use as a multi-use facility for ice skating, possibly hockey. It needs to be the size of a hockey rink. That's what got everybody stirred up there. Pickleball is obviously going to be on that. Farmer's market.
Is that going to be on the ice? Is that?
No, that's going to be on a concrete slab.
Basically, as I understand it, a hockey rink is 200 feet by 85 feet.
It is that the right dimension? That's correct. Okay, yes. The slab is going to be big enough to have a hockey rink. It's going to be a concrete slab. There's not going to be any chillers or cooling anything right now.
So, I mean, initially, it won't be a hockey rink. Is that what you're saying?
Correct. It may never be a hockey rink.
Okay.
It's going to be big enough for a hockey rink.
Okay.
The goal was to have it big enough for a hockey rink, but for a working ice skating rink.
Okay, so basically, once again, the dimensions are 236 by...
230 by 136 is the approximate dimensions for the building.
All right.
That way we can put in, at a later date, or even now, depending on how the money is, restrooms, dressing rooms, snack bars, that sort of stuff. But right now, we're trying to rebuild what we have, only better and higher, so it does not flood. When we did meet with the architect a couple times right after the bid. We met with the main architect, which is Kelly, and I don't remember Kelly's last name, and one of her main engineers. And actually, he put it in pretty good perspective for me as far as what I'm thinking of, for a good way to describe it. They designed the fairgrounds building in Alamo. Picture the open use area of the fairgrounds, the new one. Something approximately that size. Open walls, so it does have the
Is
wind.
it how tall?
I don't know the height. All that have to be decided.
Is it gonna be a two-story building?
The eve height was gonna be 14 feet, Tom. In case we ever wanted bleachers or something, you have to have a little headroom.
Right.
That's gonna be something that they are supposed to come back, or they set up a meeting with us for next week, or setting up a meeting. She's had about 2 weeks to work on it. After our meeting with her, just so she could get the scope. And so we should have some approximate numbers on what this is gonna cost and what her design is. That's really what we're looking at as of right now, is picture the fairgrounds building up here where it will not flood, and raising the parking lot where it won't flood.
Okay.
That way, it can be used year round. Obviously, what we have now cannot be used in the summertime,
Right.
even though it is a great covered building. But in the wintertime, it will have ice on it. Hopefully in the future, we'll be able to get some of the cooling mats. We've talked to the guy, I can't remember his name, Mr. Herman, that runs the El Paso Rhinos, and he upgrades his mats every few years. And he said he would probably sell those as long as they were in good shape to us.
Now, when speaking of mats, you're talking about
That would be
saltwater freezing mats?
That would be the freezing match, yes.
Okay.
And so we could extend out the skating season, whether it was for hockey or if it was just for tourists. You know, the goal was to get it big enough for a hockey rink, not necessarily to play hockey. Because even if Cloudcroft fielded a team, who would we play?
Well,
That's part of the problem.
well, most of the people in this town are like me, who don't. And they don't skate much, you know. So my idea was, what I was led to believe was that it was a hockey rink, and that was what you were after, was a hockey rink, and not so.
The hockey rink was always the size. Do you remember when we were putting the AstroTurf out at the Cloudcroft football field? That was also, we were trying to save our football team because we were down in numbers. Part of the discussion when we were doing that was we were going to an 8-man team. An 8-man field is narrower. So it would have saved us a little bit of money to build an 8-man team or an 8-man field. But you could never expand it out to a full-size football field again. And you'd be stuck.
Well, I think what would have saved money was about 10 dump trucks full of black dirt would have saved it.
It wouldn't have, they tried that.
When?
Over and over and over.
It was, all I saw was blow sand. That's all I've ever seen, and that's all they ever took off, was blow sand.
But
But if you look
You know,
around,
to build
every
it-
place where there's black dirt, there's grass. And it just seemed to me like it wasn't necessary.
well, what I was getting at is
It's a
we
done deal
built
now.
it to fill a regular football field. Because if you ever have to get expansion, which we did get back to an 11-man
So
team.
basically what you're talking about is just a pavilion.
We are talking about a pavilion with a very large concrete slab that is large
And that
enough.
will require taking all the buildings down and most of the trees along that side?
Yes,
On the south side?
quite a few trees. I don't know if all the trees. That's one thing we're gonna have to wait for her design. Because we don't want to encroach on the park any more than we already are. And I'm not counting the dirt pile.
That seems to be a point of discussion.
The dirt pile is partially there for point of discussion to get people in here so we do have input, like yourself. Because there's still people that ask me about the dirt pile as of, this last week, that they didn't know what it was for. So that's kind of a billboard saying, hey, ask some questions, let's get the community involved.
Well, will you be able to use that dirt
Yes,
for
fill. Maybe not underneath the building because all that's gonna be engineered and I am not an engineer. But at least for parking, we'll be able to raise up some of that.
okay.
That was not put there just as a billboard. That was just part of the reason. It was paid for by the fire department because on a different project, but they were hauling it off to some other location. So
Well, that pretty much answers my questions, because I was still believing
aisle, because we'll be big enough. But, I mean, if we have it marked for a hockey rink, we got a hockey rink. But the main source is skating, is tourism, the whole thing. Ice skating, we're the southernmost ice, natural ice,
Natural ice.
probably in the United States, I'm not sure. Nothing to,
So what you're really building is a multi-purpose building.
yes.
That was in my mind,
It's not just.
every time we talk about it, it has to be multi-purpose.
Well, that's another question I had. When you said multi-purpose building, I wanted to know what all was going to go in. You know,
Well, I would say like if you wanted to have a car show, you could drive on that slab. If you wanted to have a farmer's market, if someone wanted to rent a portion of it and have a Lollapalooza there, you know,
Yeah, weddings, conferences.
weddings.
well, pickleball seems to be real.
Just, 2 or 3 months ago, we had a huge demonstration in here about pickleball. And the organization that was, they're wanting to get us to get a whole lot of money to redo the tennis courts for pickleball. This kind of opens everything, because that puts pickleball, I don't know, how many pickleball courts can you put in a 230 by?
A lot.
Yeah, I mean, we could have some monster tournaments in there.
Good.
You know, I mean, no, my idea is not strictly hockey. Yeah, if we can get hockey, great.
Well, this changes the whole ballgame for me, because I was of the impression that you wanted an indoor hockey rink. I mean, closed in, with
Well,
facilities.
Tom, in the design, we've asked that in the future, if we could get garage doors that, you could close the sides down, for different events. So it would, right now it's not, but, eventually you might be able to pull down garage doors along the side, kind of like the little pavilion we have, but, a more stylish glass. So, and comment on the dirt pile. That's actually a big tourist attraction with the Elper standing on it. There was 20 cars on the side of the road there a couple weeks ago when they were standing on there, 2 bulls were pushing on themselves, they're like, what happened, a wreck? What's going on? Everybody, sure would have been fun to have a paintball gun.
It would be nice to smooth that out before it snows, so kids can slide down it.
Yeah, well, this answers my question, because, this big pavilion, I'm sorry to see the park change with the trees gone, et cetera, and another big building put up. Because, that little green spot in the middle of this town is a focal point for activities. And if I was envisioning an airplane hangar, and that wouldn't work. I don't think.
Well, we're gonna see concept.
Yeah, we should get a concept pretty quick.
And our budget, Tom, we're just doing all that the budget allows. This was the
Okay, the budget's what, 900,000?
budget.
It's about
30,
800,000.
but we
Yeah.
used some of it for,
And so the idea was the skating rink is popular as it is, but it floods.
The what?
The skating rink as it is popular, but it floods. So it's popular as a farmer's market. People have done, we've all had different meetings, different concerts, things like that. So the whole idea that a gathering place in our park would be used by a variety of people is where this came from. And then we all tossed around the different things that could be done. By recognizing the size that a hockey rink would be and making sure we could do that, just make sure we didn't build it 2 feet too small. So whether that ever happens, way down the road.
I would hope so.
It's just, well,
If we had a large skating rink and we wanted to play hockey, and we couldn't because, there's steel beams in the way, that would be kind of sad.
Yeah, but I just, I don't know, I suppose there might be some elderly people in the Ukraine who skate. But
We want it to be used for as many different things as possible.
well, good for you. I would rather see an aqua center, except we don't have any water.
I would love to see an aqua center.
Well, I was thinking about that, and to focus on that. And another question I had, I know that the ball field is a dump, or was a dump at one time.
Yes.
And I wondered about, with President Joe, with his new agenda, if there would be a possibility of this community to have a place where you could take a steam bath or a hot tub, or swim, or have exercise places, etc. But in that too, I thought about, because this town, I remember they had a children's sanatorium here for, little lungers, what you're gonna call them.
Yeah.
And so basically the focus for me was the sweet air. That's why I stayed here. It was the air and the light that I liked. So basically it was like a health center. And a focus on that for this town makes more sense to me than anything else. Because you could have, little shops or something in that complex that would help defray the cost of maintaining it, because I've taken care of swimming pools and they're expensive. And we don't have any water, but we could get some. And, that's basically my idea for this town and the people who live here. A place like that would be a health center where they can get a massage or a chiropractor, whatever they wanted to get. But they could swim and steam and soak and do whatever they wanted to do. And I think I would, myself, would like that.
I like that idea a lot. I think that would be a whole lot more expensive than what we're looking at right now.
Oh, yeah.
But no,
But see, the thing
but
is,
if we can, I'm all for growing, as long as we're growing in the right direction.
well, I would think that a bonding issue with that in mind would be possible.
It might be, but now I gotta bring us back in because we're going down a rabbit hole. So we gotta get back onto the agenda.
Well, I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Do you have anything else on the skating rink?
You pretty much answered the questions I had.
Appreciate it.
And thank you, Tom. Hey, you're not allowed to leave till the meeting's over.
Okay, I'll be right out here.
Okay.
Where's the law?
Okay. For everybody that's on the internet, he promised he would come back. Next on the agenda, nomination of the Planning and Zoning Board members. I know I have this list. I need tabs.
I think I gave it to you.
Because I'm not going to, it's in here. Okay, Planning and Zoning. Do we need to have this confirmed by the board next meeting as well, or? Okay, I know that is something we want to discuss in a minute anyway. For the planning and zoning, what we have looked at, because it is staggered terms, and through history, with people moving away at the wrong times, everybody's term came up at the same time. So for the appointing, okay, we are on there with, y'all can confirm my ideas tonight. Okay, my appointments would be, if I can get this right, I gotta go off memory, because I don't have my notes on here. Tom Blessum, Tabitha Foster, and Nathan Tompkins to be reappointed at a 2-year term. Jessica Beach and Mark Tatum to be appointed at a 4-year term. You're shaking your head.
No, it's a 2-year term total, so the first 3.
So it's a 1 year and a 2 year?
And 2.
Sorry, I was going off of mine. Off of this. Tom's over there about to run out the building. Okay. Tom Blessum, Tabitha Foster, and Nathan Tompkins for a 1-year term. And then Mark Tatum and Jessica Beach for a 2-year term. That will put us back on a staggered term. And the reasons I chose when I did is Jessica and Mark are the newest members. And so they get the short straw.
There it is. Yeah, you need that in the form of a motion?
I would, that is, oh, wait, got one more,
Okay.
because this is a problem I have never seen since I've been here at the mayor. We have one more applicant than we did P and Z positions. So, my idea on this one, and I cleared it with him to see if it was okay, as long as it's okay with y'all, is to nominate or to appoint an ad hoc, non-voting member of David Bradshaw. be for a one-year term. And he would be eligible for all the meetings. He would not have a vote in the meetings. But because we do have a history of people moving away, moving on, he would be the next logical step to fill any positions.
He'd be the alternative on the jury.
He's the alternate juror. Yes, and he would be up to speed on everything.
Would we be restructuring our policies, Jeff?
I don't believe so.
Because it's not changing the dynamics of the P and Z. It's just adding an observer.
And we're limited to 5 people on it right now, even.
Right.
And,
So he wouldn't be on it. He would be an observer.
I mean, that's what all of us are, if we go to the meeting. That doesn't take an appointment. If he's interested, he needs to show up to the meeting, learn what's going on.
I don't want to discourage any volunteers.
I hear that.
So
So you want a motion?
I would like a motion to accept my appointments.
Can we clarify, Mr. Bradshaw's appointment, is that,
That would be an ad hoc, non-voting position.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, we have a motion on the table to reappoint the existing to the terms accordingly and adding a ad hoc position for David Bradshaw. Do I have a second? Second by Trustee Mitchell. Any further discussion?
I'd like to amend the motion. I don't think we need to expand this commission. This thing's worked with 5 people for, I've been coming to these meetings like 30 years. And that Mr. Bradshaw wants to participate is great, but he participates by attending meetings. This is how we've all gotten to where we are today. The idea of creating a non-voting person, that's what anyone who comes to any meeting is, a non-voting spectator. So we don't need to make that official. So I would amend it that all the, Tom, Tabitha, Nate, Jessica, and Mark are reappointed, but we don't expand this to a 6-member.
Okay.
Let him attend if he wants to.
Okay, we have an amendment motion to agree to the original appointments with no ad hoc member. Do I have a second on the amended motion? Having no second, the amendment will die, and we'll go back to the original motion of appointing all of them with the ad hoc position. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 3-1. Congratulations, new P&Z. I look forward to working with you. Okay. The next thing. See Tom trying to sneak out now behind us. Is discussion action, review of Title II, Chapter 1, Planning and Zoning Commission for Trustee Maynord. This is what came up last meeting as far as appointing. The way our ordinance read is after the election is when we traditionally appoint the P and Z. I believe the reason you wanted it on here is to discuss moving it to after the new members take office.
Yes, yeah, there were 2 things that because our election cycle has changed, we need to match our appointments to the state election cycle and then get back, we've done tonight, we've got back on the staggered terms. That was something we drifted away from for some reason through the years. This has been hard. I mean, I agree with Bill that this is the first time we've had enough people to fill it plus more. That's great. So if we can, I would make a motion that we ask the village attorney to update Title II, Chapter 1 P&Z Commission to match the, match the election cycle of the state. So that the newly elected people are the ones that confirm the nominations of the mayor. We would do this in January instead of tonight. We've got this 2-month kind of limbo that wasn't ever intended.
The lame duck session.
Yeah, it's just awkward. It's whenever we have a change, we have these things that don't fit well. So we needed to fit the state election cycle. I guess our timing correct. And all of our, it's going to hit every one of our committees or boards. It's like, this is when they would be reappointed, when the new government is seated. So it takes the load off people. I mean, Bruce is going off to RV land, and so he's got his interest. But it lets Gail or whoever's next in line participate in government instead of inheriting one. So I think that just makes common sense. The staggering the terms is really by the state statute. That's the way you do a P&Z. It's not something we created. And the idea there is that you have continuity as people move on or come and go. Your terms match up with that. So that was my suggestion, is that we just ask the attorney to break this into compliance.
Comment?
Yes, sir.
2-1-2, terms of office. The commissioners will extend from the day of his appointment to the next regular municipal election. That should be changed to state election. That would put us on cycle. And the day of the appointment, you would stagger. It doesn't say what day it starts on or how long it is. It just says.
Yeah. The state statute is what gives us our 1-year and 2-year terms for our P&Z. That was right out of the state statute.
Then we should make that 2-1-2 in accordance with state.
And that's what I'm asking the attorney to do, is go ahead and draw it into compliance with the state statute.
I would agree with that.
But it's still a municipal election.
Is it?
Yes.
Okay.
But we can't have a municipal election that isn't on the cycle of the state game. So we gave up
Good
that.
work. Yeah.
So it would bring it all,
Okay.
bring it in.
Did you give me a motion? I got lost.
Yes, let me rephrase it. We instruct the attorney to rewrite Chapter 1, Section 2, or Title 2, Chapter 1, so that it complies with the state election cycle and its language.
Okay, have a motion on the table to instruct the attorney to rewrite the Planning and Zoning Commission to where appointments fall under new electees, right?
We gotta get rid of this, Jeff help us with our language. We gotta get rid of this, we have 60 days in between. If, right now, our language says we're gonna do it the next meeting after a municipal election, that's tonight. But then the new trustees or mayors or whoever's elected in the future aren't sworn in until January 1, because now we're on the state cycle. So what we're trying to do, and my wording's probably not right, we're trying to draw this just together. So how do we gotta get rid of the next meeting following a municipal election.
Have the appointments follow the actual office, the actual new members taking office?
Well, the state statute is what creates that in the first place in the municipal code. So there is a dichotomy between the municipal code, which has been around for a long time. That's where, as I recall, that's where the language is. It says organizational meeting first, first meeting after the election. So I'll have to take a look at it and make sure that they're compliant with the municipal code as well.
In there, say, anyone who was appointed is still appointed if somebody's appointed to replace them. So we don't lose them in months. We're trying to get this bridge to where whatever new members there are to the council are the ones that participate.
And what you're looking for is the new council to actually vote on the nomination.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I'm gonna work on.
Yeah.
Okay.
We can just instruct them to work on this.
It might be where they're nominated
as the mayor hires an employee, and they're an employee from the get-go until the next regular council meeting. That's a state statute. We don't have any control over that. And I'm pretty sure that on putting non-employees on commissions, tie it into, so that the new board is the one that's confirming it.
Yeah.
When they're nominated is, they're not nominated until they come up.
They might change their mind in 2 months, though. I mean,
Sure, man.
That's the point.
you know,
I understand what the objective
Okay,
is,
do we need a motion for this?
Jim
Or do we just,
not necessarily.
yes, ma'am.
Excuse me, I need some clarification here. After tonight, will I have a planning and zoning commission
Yes.
that can serve
Yeah.
and
Yes.
act? I just wanted to make that clarification, because I need,
They're not getting out of it that easy.
okay.
And it may be that we have to do it again in January.
Oh, understandable, okay.
Well, it shouldn't affect today anyway. Okay, so do we need a motion for this, or do we just charge it?
You just gotta try and
I
show some
understand,
draft.
what
Yeah,
your
that's-
objective is, and that is to fit appointed boards confirmed by current council. That's going to be there when they're serving, not the one that's going out of office. That is a weird thing that they've done.
yes.
Do we need a vote to ask you to do that?
Because we'll have to vote on it after.
I'll have a draft ordinance for it.
Point made.
Okay, we are good. No action on that one. Jeff will bring us something. Okay. Recommendation to award RFP 2021.02, the Pure Water Project completion. Okay, who would like to present on that one, Ms. Barker?
So we went out to RFP for the Pure Water project completion on September 10th, with a mandatory pre-proposal meeting on 9/23. There were 3 respondents that showed at that pre-proposal meeting. Livingston and Associates, CDM Smith Incorporated, and Bohannon Houston. It was responded to by one engineering design service, that was CDM Smith. However, the proposal that came in is to work with, in association with Livingston and Associates, Bohannon and Houston, and JSAI, which is John Shoemaker and Associates. We have evaluated it with 5 independent evaluators. Scott Powell also did me a great favor and called 2 of the previous clients, Alamogordo Water and K Bailey Plant, that CDM Smith has worked on. They were highly recommended. Throughout the proposal, you can tell that they have really done their homework with Livingston and Associates, and they pretty much know exactly what's going on. Eddie Livingston would be proposed as a deputy project manager. He would not be in charge of the project. It would be CDM Smith that we would hold accountable for anything. And based on the evaluations, Scott's phone calls, and the fact that this is out of all 3 of them that showed up, they all collaborated and came together to finish out the project. Staff would recommend that it be awarded to them. Out of 150 potential points, the average score was 143.6. And I can tell you it was a very well thought out, well written response to the proposal.
The Mary Kay Hutchins, is it so? Project,
Kay.
that is Kay
Kay
Hutchins. Oh, Kay Bailey, right.
Yeah, she used to be called Mary Kay Bailey.
Yes. That is the well filled outside of El Paso that everybody has come in and told us we need to follow that example. And these are the people who did it.
And I think that one of the good parts is that they seem to have all gone, and probably the engineering society is a small one, I don't know. It seems like they've gone and they've done a lot of talking with each other and felt that, obviously they could use a lot of what Mr. Livingston has done for us in the past, and be able to, take his brain work over the last 17 years. The nice thing for, I think, Jenny and myself and the village of Cloudcroft is that you have at least two very major players in the industry that will be on board, and one of those major players will be totally responsible. So we will see movement on this project. Whether or not we can afford it, I don't know.
That's what my next question was going to be.
Okay, so at that point, once you make, if you decide to take my recommendation to award, then Jenny would go into negotiations.
With the project, the New Mexico Environment Department project manager.
And they have,
And when we're talking about completion, we don't, seemed to me when we did our tour, we didn't have a whole lot to do down there I really would entertain Councilman Mitchell's idea is that we hook it up ourselves and produce water and test it. You know? But
and that is an option. We can reject the RFP. However, at that point, we will not have any engineer. Or if you remember, Eddie Livingston's contract has expired.
Right.
So we do not have any engineer. So anything that an engineering stamp, which I think that there are still quite a few things that do, we would not have that. So we could reject this bid or this request for proposal, but we will have to go out for another one to complete this project. And I think you have 4 of your major players in this.
Like I say, it sounds to me, I mean, from your presentation, if we have Eddie where whatever Eddie knows is not lost. This was something I was concerned with early on, was that we spent so much money getting someone else up to speed. That even if they were great, it's just going to be a reset.
Right.
That they've included and formed a team is pretty smart of them as a group. They understand the problems. Continuity in good or bad, at least it's here where it is. So that won't be lost. I think that's a good deal. That these professional groups have learned how to do this is so that they appeal to more specifics or technology on the job. That's a strength, I think.
We've got 10 years into this project, multi-million-dollar, so let's go ahead and run this through and let's get this thing on.
Get the darn thing
This
done.
is absurd.
And we can certainly, after tonight, after the award, we can certainly ask CDM Smith to make a presentation to you all at the meeting.
I would make a motion that we accept CDM Smith as the engineer on the Pure Water project.
Okay, we have a motion on the table. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Trustee Maynord. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. I think that is a good move.
I'm sorry, do you know if the state requires a roll call on this one? Is there a lot of, no? I don't think so. Okay.
We can give them one.
Sure, let's do that.
Okay.
Because I know that there's some that they
Absolutely.
I would like to redo the vote and ask for a roll call. Trustee Smaga?
Aye.
Trustee Teeman?
Aye.
Trustee Mitchell?
Aye.
Trustee Maynard?
Aye.
Aye for a unanimous roll call vote.
Thank you, I'm very rarely after that.
You're usually yelling at me because I read too many. Okay, let's move on to the review of proposed ordinance 395, Public Safety Division and recreating the EMS. This is what we had a few months ago, and we sent it to Jeff to work on. And that is because we are prepared to open the EMS director position, posting it Saturday. Is that correct, Barbara?
Yes.
Did we get the job description done?
Yes. You did 90% of it, or your wife did 90% of it, I'm sorry. I would like to thank Trustee Teeman and his wife for helping our clerk with the job description and the organization on that. But we do need to pass this ordinance back because after the loss of Charlotte, we put the EMS director under the fire chief. So we've been working with that with our police department and with Jeff. And everything is right in here.
You know, Ed, on my first read of this, and this is real large and complex. This is a kind of a regressive approach to law enforcement, where we're going back to departments of public safety. We've been having our fire department, in my experience in Cloudcroft, has worked real well. Its greatest challenge right now is just getting more volunteers. When we look at creating a whole new division, this is just a growth of bureaucracy. It's one of those things. We haven't had this opportunity to consider like this cost benefit of the ratio versus the current system. And we're already spending a couple of $1 million a year in the village. This thing, when I read it, I can just see it. It won't be long before it's going to need a secretary. It's going to need an assistant here. This is a new umbrella organization to try and draw everything back together that was split out in the past. So Kevin is our police chief. That's what he was nominated for and approved for. I think he's a pretty busy guy. You know, I don't believe he's got a whole lot of time that isn't required to be chief. We just expanded our police force to 4 members. That cost us about $150,000 a year because we said that we needed more law enforcement. The idea now of pulling him away from his primary duty and creating a new division that he's going to be the head of, we've got to study this. This is a lot of stuff. It's kind of like, what immediate problem, are we trying to solve again? It's, since we lost Charlize, we've had problems in EMS, EMTs. That's not cured by this. We need more volunteers, we need qualified people. We put it in our budget so we could offer some money to try and attract somebody. That was addressing that issue. To create a whole new division, and with all the different bureaucratic steps that are going to be new, I think it's just overkill. Due to the complexity of it, and then we're pulling our police chief from his current duties. Kevin, aren't you a pretty busy guy?
You know, we're busy all the time.
Yeah.
This is one of those deals that if it helps the village and it cures the problem, then I'm a cop. I adapt to anything.
Yeah,
If it means another 2 hours, well, that's 2 hours. For me, the reason I was interested when the mayor talked about it has nothing to do with fire. Me and my guys are tired of going to these EMS calls and waiting 30 minutes, 45 minutes for AMR to get there. That's just not, it looks bad on us as a community, it looks real bad on us, and we're standing there.
But by us forming a new division, I don't think, we're not addressing that issue at all. That
Hopefully
changed.
the EMS director does.
I agree we need an EMS director. I don't think,
the answer, but right now, I think we're opening ourselves up to a huge potential lawsuit. We are not providing the services that we say we are. Now, I don't know if
this
this
won't
is the
change
correct
that.
answer.
This is just a new bureaucratic organization.
Then we need to change the whole EMS service, get rid of EMS, make it a transport service to get ourselves, the village, off the hook on this whole issue. If you're saying this isn't going to help or clean up the problem, then we need to take a different approach to it and do away with it, period.
Well, and those are good points, and that's the nature of when I say it's complex and large, it is, and we need to study it more. This isn't the answer. This doesn't fix anything but create a new layer of government with no known benefit. It's not, there's not one thing we mentioned here tonight that's being cured by creating a new division. same old problem. You didn't get rid of the problem. You just reshuffled the deck. Now, that is, we've got fire funds that are administered by the fire marshal's office that historically have been administered by the local fire chief. That's okay, that's not a bad system. It's built 3 wonderful fire stations here in town. We've got a bunch of great equipment. We don't have enough people volunteering. That's the thing the fire department needs, is more volunteers. It doesn't need a new boss. When we had gotten comfortable with the way EMT and EMS had been working in the past, we got used to it, but the message there is we're all mortal. There's going to be a last day. We weren't set up for the last day there. That situation had kind of drifted. We've talked before, volunteerism in our country is on the wane. How we reinvigorate that in our small community. I don't have a crystal ball that's any different than you guys. But creating a new bureaucratic division,
Let's just do away with it.
well,
So I kind of have to agree with John,
It's a dangerous position. We
well,
put ourselves in.
we struggle with, and providing an EMS service up here, it'd be one thing if we just did it within the village limits, but we don't. We don't, and I'm not trying to be pessimistic, but the village takes a lot of burden. We're good neighbors, but really, we take a lot of burden on the village and its constituents and its tax base to provide service to outlying small subdivisions. And, it just seems like we have to take the lion's load here and, and always find a solution. So, I hate to say it, because I was an EMT and I did run on this ambulance and everything, so yeah, I understand the value of it, but at some point, I think we need to get back to 1960. If you got an injury and your dad looked at you and said, get a towel on that and throw that boy in the truck. We've got to get to the hospital. People got this false sense. Well, if we wait long enough, the ambulance will get here. Hell, you're bleeding out. Let's go, Tie it up. We've come to a point where we can't fill these volunteer positions. Why are we burdening ourselves? Let's just make it a transportation service, I understand the need to try to create, a position and stuff, and try to, maybe that will encourage people to join up and everything, but my goodness, we just, other than a penny,
If you talk to the other fire departments and the other ambulance services in this area, you'll find out they've got the very same problem we do.
Sure.
I talked to a guy the other day from Texas, East Texas, a small town, a little bit bigger than here. Their problem is exactly the same that we're having, so it's not Cloudcroft problem.
It's not regional.
Universal problem.
Right.
So if you're saying this is not the answer, what's your answer?
Well,
I'm not.
No, I think it's a great question, and everyone's comment proves, I think we're on the right track, that we have a problem. We need an answer to a problem, but creating a whole new division is not an answer to the problem. This thing is completely divorced from what our issues are. Our issue, we don't have enough volunteers. We need the EMTs. Do we go to one of the ambulance providers and give them a garage? Is there some other way we can cut that 90-minute wait time down? Maybe, I don't know.
My conversation with them, they don't want to talk to you.
Yeah, I think that's right. AMR doesn't want any more areas.
They haven't got enough.
Okay, we're doing a lot of backtracking right now.
Okay.
And the reasoning is because 4 years ago, when I got on as a trustee, one of the things that came up in front of us, and I think most of y'all were here, was we don't have an ambulance, and we say that we do.
Yep.
And that's a dangerous situation. We've given 4 years of let's do this, let's do that, and nothing has worked. Now I am proposing, I put Kevin in charge of the money because I had other issues and accountability. And so everything is getting grouped through there, especially with the police department in that building. We
as of the in-shop property getting sold, a new public service department is the number one thing on our ICIP. We're talking millions of dollars for an ambulance service that does not work. And can't say it doesn't work a little bit, it does not work. We have Jubal and Penny who will go to almost everything. And if they have a helper, that is great, but, you know, we're working them to death. So I came up with this. I did not come up with it by myself. We worked on it in-house with Kevin. I tried working with Eric the best I could. I tried working with y'all. This is my idea. It puts everything, it puts all the accountability under a paid employee that can be there at least 40 hours a week. Because as a working mayor, I can't oversee everything at the fire department, nor should I. And it's not another bureaucracy, it's a little bit of accountability, and it brings everything into one way of doing stuff. Because right now, the fire department, their IT department is completely different than anything else with the village. Purchasing is completely different than a lot of things else at the village. What we're trying to do is make it all similar. I'm not trying to take any power away from Aaron as a fire chief. What I'm trying to do is get us all doing the exact same thing, building it up. If this works, and it works the way that I hope it works, we will have an EMS director that runs an ambulance, has time because they're a paid, basically a paid volunteer, they're not getting paid a whole lot, has time to do a little more recruiting, and I know that we've tried a whole lot of different stuff. I'm just trying something different. What I do not want to do is go back to the same thing we've done for the last 4 years, which is absolutely zero progress on running an ambulance. I am confident that if a building's on fire, that our fire department's going to show up. But I am not confident that we're going to get an ambulance if we need it, unless it's AMR. And I want everybody to have as much confidence in the ambulance as they do the fire department. This may not be the right idea, but if we do nothing, that is the wrong idea, and we are opening ourselves up to a lawsuit, which I would have probably testified on the person that's suing us, because we have not done anything in the last 4 years to improve this situation. And that's the reason that we came up with this plan. I'm asking for your support in putting it in. If it works the way I think it works, a few years down the road, maybe Kevin can step down from this position and we can kind of go back to where we were, because everybody will be on the same page. If it doesn't, we could try something else.
Government only grows, it never shrinks. Well, once you create another division, it will never go away.
This is not another division.
But it says there, it says a division.
It's a renaming of our fire department. We're the only position that is created is the public safety director, which instead of the fire chief, the EMS director coming to the mayor, they're going to the public safety director, and that gives somebody on site. So anything Chief Worshing wants to do, he doesn't have to find the mayor, who might be, like today, was in Alto, out of cell phone range. Because the chief of police is here because he's paid to be here pretty much 24 hours a day.
I'll support your idea with one stipulation.
Okay.
It has to have a time frame set to it.
Grandfather,
Sunset.
I mean, 1 year from now, 2 years from now, whatever, but a specific time frame. And if it doesn't work in that period of time, then we go a whole new route.
You know, guys, we've got a police chief that we need, because we have said our department needs to get bigger because we need more law enforcement. We funded that. In our last budget workshop, we said we've got a problem. We don't have an ambulance. So we said, okay, let's fund that. Now, you're not creating a public safety division, and it is a new division. And the director of public safety as an office, and you drag a police chief into a whole new description, you're going to create a whole nother, very expensive paid employee here in just a short period of time. Either the police department is going to have problems because the police chief, he's gonna be pulled in two different directions. What's his priority? Is he the police chief, or is he the director of public safety? When that day comes, Kevin's only one man. He can only do one place.
Let's go back. What's your solution?
The solution is we need to pay for ambulance services. We gotta hire people. We don't need a director to create this whole big organization to go over things that are working anyway.
They're not.
We got an ambulance problem. Other than that, you don't have a problem. You need more volunteers. You're not curing more volunteers by creating a whole new division.
What's your solution?
If you want to say we don't have an ambulance service, now it's crystal clear, and then build one. But you've got to hire somebody. We funded that a year ago almost. Why haven't we hired somebody? We've just now created a job description, but we funded it a year ago? That doesn't seem right.
When a year ago, it was in February.
Well, March is our.
Wasn't until July.
You know, but anyway, it's, we knew that the answer then.
Because we had to change the ordinance. Because we changed it when we,
To pay a person,
yes.
okay?
In 2020, you did away with the EMS division or department, incorporated it in the fire department. That's what you did in 2020.
Okay.
So we're trying to separate it out.
And in March of '21, we created some funding because we weren't getting enough volunteers. We said, this has got to be a paid position, we're not getting anybody. I think that's addressing the issue. Now, maybe too slowly, but in the end, that is the answer. You're going to have to fund that job at a competitive wage if you want to attract somebody. If the current ambulance service, they're having trouble attracting people, and they're paying. We're not going to be different. This isn't going to be like a magic wand, and all of a sudden, oh, Kevin, we're going to show up with 6 or 8 guys to run our ambulance. If they're there, they would be there right now. So I think it feels good. It doesn't change the
Do
situation.
you want to do this or disband it?
Chief Summers.
What's your,
I think this is more an administrative deal when the mayor talked to me. There was some administrative issues that the mayor wanted a full-time employee taking care of. I don't want in their operations, that was never part of it. Whether it's Eric as a fire chief or that director who we hire them. The idea is for them to run that department administratively, and that gives them a way that they're dealing with a full-time employee. This was one solution we seen when we called around. The other solution was a village administrator. That's the way the two places I talked to, they did one or the other. You either had a village administrator that took care of your volunteers, or they put that on your police chief. The only reason we put DPS director in there is I told the mayor, I won't go to him and say, I'm the police chief, you're not gonna answer me. That's not right. To where DPS, it's accepted that that's all three. It's a name change, is what it is. Rio Rancho DPS, they still go by DPS. They're under the same system. So it's a name, it's not that you're creating another department. All he's doing is adding to my job. I mean, that's what it is. We don't have a village administrator that can control that, so somebody's got to do it. And I walked in the building.
We're changing the description of our police chief. You know, I mean, you're going to have conflict.
We're not changing the description of the police chief because we're creating that other one. That means if we change police chiefs, we don't have to put them as the Department of Safety.
But that's what I mean. Now you're going to have 2 guys on salary. You're going to end up with this director as a job, guys. This is how government grows.
Isn't that what we did? No, we funded the director.
No, we funded an EMT.
An EMT director.
For like $26,000.
EMS, isn't that how we qualified it as an EMS director?
Have we advertised to fill the position?
It has not been advertised.
We're waiting to make it fit the ordinances.
You did away with the EMS department. Apparently funded it
It already is.
Provide
Yeah.
a transport.
Already
You
is.
have the liability if you do that.
Yeah.
Excuse me,
But you gotta help me out there.
it already is. The EMS department does not exist. If you look at, and I can't tell you what the ordinance number was, in 2020, there was discussion of this, and basically you shifted stuff into the fire department and this did away altogether with the EMS department. All this, I
It's
know
a
this
logical
because
thing, because we don't have the personnel to ride the boss here.
I'm a cheap typist. If I can paste it, I'm gonna do it. When I was dressed for this task, I could create a public service division separately. And I had to go back and find an old ordinance where I could pull the EMS stuff out because it got wiped out. It is not a part of the new code. It just handed out this year. There, if you look at, I think it's, there's an A, B, and C, and if you look at, I think it's B is gone. You've
I'm
got,
sorry, he has my copy. I had to hand over my copy.
Chief Summers and Chief Worthing both had something to mention.
Well, and did we not just appoint Jubal as the EMS director?
No,
No.
Assistant Fire Chief. Chief Summers?
Jim's
I
got.
got a question more with what was said. Is the idea from the council that we want EMS up and running tomorrow, so disband what we have, or what's the?
Don't know.
Because I'm gonna tell you, if you want EMS running tomorrow, you better get on the phone to Maynord. Because that's your only, and then we're right back to what we talked about. We're waiting, not we, but our people are gonna be waiting 30, 45 minutes. And I actually think, that's the quick and dirty and easy solution.
Yeah, that's what I said.
Are we missing these pages?
No, in 2020, ordinance number 387, you did away with the EMS department altogether.
Okay, then I make a motion that we disband the department, run a service only for transportation and be done with it. We're not gonna get anywhere with this argument.
So we'll no longer hire anybody.
Correct.
We're going to give up on the ambulance altogether. Okay?
That's my motion.
There is a motion to disband the ambulance department as we know it and go to a rescue only. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
We have a second by Trustee Maynord. Any further discussion?
Not here.
All in favor?
Aye.
Abstain. I'm not quite sure I feel the crux of
I
all.
get lost there for a minute.
You can argue this thing for the next week.
You're correct on that, John.
I mean, that's the whole problem.
Hey, wait, hang on a second.
The transport.
All right,
It's
let me try to clarify that, because the motion sounded to me like it disbanded something that didn't exist.
Yes.
So all you're doing is saying you're going to continue the way you are right now.
Correct. That's not what he said.
No change.
He said we're getting rid of the ambulance. That is the motion that was on the table, was to get rid of the ambulance.
Hey, can I make a suggestion real quick after talking to PRC, and I think Eric's gonna help me out with this? I think y'all are getting confused by vehicle. With what Mr. Kingman's saying, you can drop that service down to a first responder unit, that ambulance can still run. Only
Okay,
here.
so we have to talk about two things. What is your visual perception of what an ambulance is? So in the public, people think of an ambulance as a physical thing. They see driving, you get in the back of it, you drive down the road. Okay, that's public perception. So, but that is not what we're talking about here. In the state of New Mexico, under PRC, you are licensed to operate an ambulance. The only difference between an ambulance, in this is a legal sense, not a regulatory sense. The difference between an ambulance and a certified medical rescue in New Mexico is that an ambulance can charge for services. That is the only difference. There are a whole whole bunch of rules that apply to each individual, the certified medical rescue and the ambulance individually. Some, very few rules are slightly different, but generally the equipment that's carried, the staff, the level of training of the staff that are on that ambulance will remain the same. So we have to understand we're talking, what we're talking about exactly. So if you want to not operate a ambulance, which is controlled by the Public Regulation Commission in New Mexico, we will then no longer charge for services. However, the same exact vehicles that sit in the fire station right now, we can take the word ambulance off of it, the little PRC number that's on the fender, take that off of it. We do have to apply to the Department of Health. So now we're talking a completely different agency. So we will no longer be regulated by the Public Regulation Commission. We'll be regulated by the Department of Health. We will apply to them for a certified medical rescue, and it will be granted. There's not a process. It's not like an ambulance where there's an anti-competition clause and all that. They have to go to a public hearing. So the exact same equipment that is there now the vehicle will be the same, the equipment inside it will be the same, the personnel will still be licensed the same, and we will respond the same. I will tell you that in the last year, Penny just completed a run study, which Chief Summers was able to get some numbers from our dispatch. She cross-referenced them to all of our runs in the past year, or 10 months for this calendar year. And we have, our ambulance has transported roughly about 30% of the calls it's received, which is better than last year. Last year, right after Charles passed away, we were down to much lower than that. So we have gotten better, but we all agree that 30% does not run an ambulance. It is not fair to the community to expect that's the level of service at 30% response. However, of all the calls I'm sorry, did I get that wrong?
No, you're good.
Okay.
You want the paper?
And so, but all of the medical calls that were received, so that's all the calls for medical assistance that were received, whether it's an ambulance call, a fire call, whatever. Whoever requested medical assistance, what was the number of those calls that were filled? So, calendar year to date, that's 83%. So 83% of the medical calls that have been requested in the village, within the village, have been filled by either a firefighter, a medically trained person, or the ambulance, but someone has gotten there and provided some level of medical treatment. So if you want to disband or give up the license, to give up the certificate of need or necessity to the PRC and say, we're not going to run an ambulance anymore, then that's definitely something we can do. We'll apply, we'll get the exact same equipment, we'll do the same thing, and you can expect that you will still get 83% of your calls met by the same thing that you really get right now on the street, but we just can't bill for it. So where does the cost burden come down to? The fire department will, it's the burden of the fire department just to provide that. So there's two funding streams for an ambulance. One is the one that we bill for. There's all the costs that are associated with that, the billing, the various things that go with it, but we also get EMS Fund Act. So we will still get EMS Fund Act money. We have to apply for that each year, but it will be a smaller amount. Now, this year we only got $7,300. We can expect to get maybe in the $5,000 range. So we still get a little bit. It replenishes supplies, and it'll help us operate, but the remainder of that cost will be borne by the fire department. Or if you choose, you can kick in some money and bear some of that cost yourself, or however you want to do that. So I just want to point out, unfortunately there was an article that was put in the Mountain Monthly that I just read today, and it kind of gives a little bit of a wrong perception of what an ambulance is. So I want to clarify that. So we're talking the regulatory sense of an ambulance, and then what the perception is on the street of what an ambulance is.
Okay, I have to bring up a point of order though. John's motion was illegal because getting rid of our ambulance service is not on the agenda. And so we cannot do this without it being posted and without rehearsed.
Your liability is the same. You're still going to be responsible for getting people to those calls.
If they're not getting there now, taking the stickers off of the ambulance isn't going to make a bit of difference.
I don't know, but I'm just saying, you still got the responsibility as the village to get people there, no matter what we call
Right.
it. We gotta get people in those.
So the thing with the certified, with an ambulance though, is Otero County holds the current certificate of need.
We can either go to the next.
Otero
meeting
County does what?
To see if we
Yeah,
want to.
I think everybody wants to hear this.
The suggestions are basically, back in 95, I crushed my hands on a job site here in town. Lois Fuller was in the ambulance with me that day. My heart rate got up to about 180 or something, and they had me strapped down. They transported me to an ambulance that could handle what was wrong with me. That was the best I got. The only way I got that ambulance, I didn't sit there waiting on it. You can't imagine the pain that was happening. I got the pickup truck. We drove found the ambulance. They immobilized me, took me down. I had a cardiac unit out of Alamogordo meet us because they really thought I was going to die of a heart attack. That was back when we had all the volunteers in the world. We were well staffed in those years. I was grateful. But that is really all we're going to do. We don't have the tax base. We don't have the expertise. We can't fund, an 8 or 10 man. I mean, if you talk about 24-hour a day trying to cover with ambulances, we're nowhere near there. We can't even fix our roads, our water right now. Yet. So this idea of if we go to just an emergency medical response, whatever the liability is, that's why we have a member of the self-insured group. This is no different than any other small town. These budget issues hit, lack of population, lack of volunteers, you said it across the country. So back to what's on our agenda is this ordinance. I don't think fixes anything we're talking about tonight. If we want to put these options on, that's what the mayor said, we're going to put them on the agenda for next month, then this is the discussion, and maybe we'll get something done. Because it's either we do.
We've been hashing this for the last 3 years, and it's time to do something. Right, wrong, or indifferent.
Yes, I agree.
It needs to go away.
We either need to fix it or admit we can't and do away with it.
But I'm more concerned about the liability that we're sitting here on our backs with, because we're taking no action. We're not doing it, we're just ignoring the issue.
That is the reason that I put this in front of us.
You have no qualified immunity anymore as the village.
If we can get an EMS director in here, hopefully we can start creating something. If we start creating runs, we create some money. If we start creating money, we might be able to pay somebody. But right now, if we quit, the best we're going to get is what we have right now. And yes, sir.
I want to just expand on a couple little things. So the certified medical rescue I talked about, what I would recommend we apply for is a transport capable. There's a non-transport and a transport. The transport capable would still be able to pick up the patient here in Cloudcroft, and it would transport and either rendezvous with an available ambulance, if there is an available one from AMR, so they would be paged at the same time and we'd meet up somewhere along the way, or if there is no ambulance available, or AMR just says, go ahead and transport because you have the capability to do so, we can still transport those patients to the hospital. Again, the only difference between an ambulance and certified medical rescue transport capable is we can't charge. It's only money. Everything else remains the same. And I also want to say, so as far as the liability concerned, this is something that it is just off the presses, but it's also possibly a clerical error. But I want to bring it to your awareness, just so that you're aware of it. So we got back our last permit to operate, so it's called the certificate of need. And the language that is on it is different from that which we have known in the past. We brought it to the attention of the Public Regulation Commission, and they are not even sure why it was changed. It's not, there's a way that can change in Santa Fe without us knowing about it. They can take an action like that, but it's extremely rare and unlikely, so they're researching how that occurred. However, I just want to bring it to your attention. We've always known, for as long as I've been here, we have a coverage area of 10 miles to the north, east, and south of Cloudcroft Highway 82 to the west. That is our coverage area. So when you're talking about liability or coverage, we do have liability that extends past the village limits. And that's kind of what you're talking about, is we have liability out into the county. What we just found on this, and again, they're researching it to see if it was a clerical error or if there was a reason that the commission did this. I mean, we just found this out this week, or last week, so it's still being researched. However, the current certificate says we only provide ambulance service to Cloudcroft only. And so with that, when you're talking about increased funding, if they chose to draw down our area to the geopolitical boundary, and they're going to stick to that, then the number of runs will not go up. It is what's there on that piece of paper. And so, I mean, it is reducing some liability from the county side of things. We're not running out to the county, but we also won't get nearly the runs that we've ever seen in the past. And then the last thing I want to just wrap up with this thought process is Otero County is the other political entity that has a certificate of ambulance. AMR is the contractor that provides that service to the county. The county certificate says Otero County. It does not say Otero County excluding Cloudcroft. And so if Cloudcroft gives up its ambulance service, Otero County still is responsible, just like it is for Tularosa, just like it is for Alamogordo. So there may be some negotiation with Otero County, maybe a little bit of funding. That's a different issue, but as far as the liability of it, they already have a certificate of need that says all of Otero County within its boundaries.
Comment.
Yes, sir.
Remember the little town I was discussing last
They
week?
didn't have an ambulance, did they?
No, I didn't. The nearest ambulance was 18 miles away at the nearest hospital. You got hurt, back of the pickup, you were there faster than an ambulance could possibly respond.
I think the
And
situation.
we had no liability.
Well, the other issue is if we go ahead and hire somebody, coming from healthcare, I can tell you, you're looking at a minimum of 1 year now before this is going to be operational. So you're looking at 1 year of zip.
Well, we've had
It's normal
3 years of zip. So we're not changing anything.
I want to take the name off of the ambulance that's on there and make it a straight courier, straight transport service.
We still got liability.
Deal is,
If we have to have a certified and licensed driver who is a volunteer, you can't depend on a driver coming, and you can't depend on them getting the patient there. And we're incurring liability because we have an ambulance, or we've got a vehicle that takes somebody.
You pull that thing out, park it out on the street, and your liability jumps 1,000%. Just by having it sit there.
Yes,
I
right.
guarantee you.
Yes, sir. One thing that you mentioned about personnel and drivers and such. So, like I said, there is those handful of small things that are slightly different between a certified medical rescue and an ambulance. So one of the things is your required level of response. So on an ambulance, we operate a basic level ambulance. We might have intermediates, a little bit higher level of care that operate on it, but we have a basic level of ambulance. And that is 80% of your calls are responded to by a basic level EMT. With a certified, in an ambulance, you're required to have 2 EMTs on scene, and 1 has to be in that patient compartment as you go into the hospital. With a certified medical rescue, there's not the requirement of having the 2 EMTs. You have to have a licensed EMT. So a licensed EMT in New Mexico has 4 levels. There's a first responder level, basic, intermediate, paramedic. So we would be, so the EMTs, like I'm the EMT basic, Penny's an EMT basic. So those of us who have that level of licensure, we generally don't like to drop a level of licensure. Sometimes we decide we're going to retire. That's different. But we generally don't like to drop that level. So I think your EMTs who currently have their basic and intermediate licenses will maintain, and you'll still have that level of response. But the requirement to have that basic EMT can drop. So we can then train EMT first responders, which is a much easier class, much less intensive. Might get a few more volunteers that would take that level, still be able to go to the scene, pick up the patient, transport it, rendezvous with an ambulance, or sometimes go to the hospital if needed. So dropping to that certified medical rescue also gives us one more level of responder that we can then train to. It might not be as daunting a task as passing an EMT basic level course.
So that might expand who's willing to participate.
Yes, sir.
One thing I think that y'all should think about, that we hear a lot, we have people that have moved into Cloud Curl specifically because of our services. It's a comforting thing when you know if you call 911, an ambulance is going to show up. You got people that, I mean, that's why they're here instead of being in the county, is because of that service.
Well, I think we've got
But we
the
can't.
discussion before
Right,
us,
we can't
the
provide it,
ordinance
so-
and creating a public safety division and a director. So we haven't even brought that to a motion. We've had another motion that needs to be struck.
Right.
You know, you're right, we've been at this 3 years. I don't have a solution tonight. I don't know if this ordinance makes it correct. And, I understand everything. Jim's right, government seldom shrinks. It always grows. But here I am, I'm gonna do this in support of the mayor. I would make a motion to accept ordinance 395 with a sunset clause of 1 year from date.
Okay, I have a motion on the table to, yes, sir.
If you're gonna put a sunset in there, you need to sunset to what? You sunset to no police department and no fire department.
No, sunset to the end of a,
Where this will expire and we'll go back to the existing ordinance as of today.
That's smart.
okay.
Just make sure.
Yes.
1 year after adoption, or as of today?
Will be effective until it's published 5 days thereafter.
So it'd be 1 year.
So this does make Kevin have less time with his family, but he volunteered.
1 year from what?
Date,
From the date that it's enacted.
okay,
Is that
that works for me. That's my motion.
1 year long enough to give this a try?
Well, I have no idea.
Okay, have a
You've
motion.
only got X amount of money, you can't keep it.
That's right.
Yeah, we budgeted for 1 year.
I've got a motion on the table to accept the ordinance with a sunset clause of 1 year from the day that it is enacted. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a motion and second. Any further discussion?
I want to just restate, this, our problem is we don't have enough people to run the ambulance. Okay, this isn't changing that at all.
It opens it up to hire another person.
Yeah, we already have it in our
It's
budget.
worth a try, we haven't done anything else in 3 years.
Right, all this does is pull our police chief away from his duties.
It's worth a try.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Has to be roll call.
Oh, yes.
Roll call. Trustee Smaga.
Aye.
Trustee Teeman.
Aye.
Trustee Mitchell.
Nay.
Trustee Maynard.
No.
Roll call, I will vote aye. And the motion passes. We have 1 year to give it a shot. And we will move on.
Can I ask when the fire department will be allowed to see this ordinance? We have not been given a copy.
We need to post it, correct, Jeff?
Well, it's been available, since publication, she said.
It hasn't been
It
published.
hasn't been published yet.
Oh, that's right.
It has not.
So
been
this is to publish it.
Yeah, that's right.
But
There's
you
no,
still have it.
all we're gonna be doing is adopting
you
this.
keep it.
December.
The only reason I made this motion is in support of Bill, and I believe that the police chief and fire department chief are collaborating, so I'm gonna, that was let's give it a shot. We haven't done anything, we gotta either don't vote on it, don't put it on the agenda, leave her in the stalemate it's in.
Okay, let's move on.
I'll be right when it's done.
Discussion action, Village Code Title VII,
Utilities, public ways, and property, chapters 1, 2, and 3. Who's got the lead on this one?
You do, you asked me to place it on there just so that you
Talk about workshops or?
Oh,
This is the water.
This is the water.
Utility.
oh, this is the water, okay. This is to, I just want that one on, I had to remember what that one was for. That is on there, and it is on there as a recurring. In case anybody wants to come up, right now we have a workshop scheduled for a week from tomorrow. On this one? Nothing. But if we need to schedule workshops, we need to get in a public meeting. So that is what that's the reason it's on there. Sorry,
We won't know until after our next workshop if we schedule another. So,
yeah, unless we,
but by keeping it here, so.
by keeping it here, it's like what we did with the tents. You know, they kept growing, things change, so I'm gonna keep it here until we get that ordinance done. I wanna make sure that that ordinance is done as fairly as possible. So, George, take your stuff home and work on it.
Okay, so that's just a point of discussion.
That is a point of discussion, but it's got an action on there just in case something really comes up that, okay? So next, and I do apologize about that, I did put it on there myself. Discussion action, approval of records destruction per New Mexico M&M.
Just rotation of
I
records.
believe this one is citations, if I'm not mistaken,
This is for the,
in my book.
for 2021.005.
New Mexico police citations and New Mexico court business license and business registry license from 2005 to 2015. Citations 2008.
Yes, I do need a motion on that, to approve the destruction of records.
This is just a clean, this is
Yes.
just a rotation, this happens all the time.
Yes,
That's what we
all
do.
of these things are old and ready for destruction. The courts gave me all the citations, and then I have business licenses and business registrations from 2005 to 2015 that can be used for.
I'll make that motion.
I have a motion from trustee Teeman to destroy the records. Do I have a second?
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Statement of revenues and expenditures. Need a motion of acknowledgement for October 2021 to-date expenditures.
Okay, I have a comment.
Okay?
In the budget, is it common practice to allow a department to exceed their budget and write checks that are negative to the budget?
No, it is not.
Okay, we have two incidents recorded here. One is janitorial supplies for the municipal court, and the other, page three, general fund. And on page 4, we have printing, publishing, advertising for the police department, and $330 over budget. You wrote the checks.
I did sign the checks.
However,
Did you know
in
you
the
were
general
writing
fund,
over budget?
excuse me, sir, in the general fund, all of these departments are within the general fund, and so if something occurs, I can move money from one line item to another to cover it.
So then I
And
think,
it's within each individual fund. So whenever we have our budget meetings and I'm going to transfer money, that's going from the general fund over to recreation. It's not talking each individual line item. Yes, it is a good practice for the departments to not go over in each particular line item, but there are instances where they are going to go over their line item. And then as long as it's within that fund, I can move and cover it.
okay, I'm satisfied then.
Okay.
I just want to make
As
sure.
long as I don't go
we're
over
right
the
there.
bottom line item of the fund
I
itself.
would agree.
And that, leaving it in the negative is exactly what we want to do so that you do see it and you do
fixing too much
Yeah,
and
when I
then
fix
it's
it
hiding
too
stuff.
much, then
Yeah, I think
you
that's
never
important,
see
right?
that.
You kind of look back and like, how did your budget perform? Because it didn't fund them correctly or else.
I think that's what we've done, you know, when you see that you didn't have enough funds in that department, when we would either increase it, or if they didn't spend enough, we took it back.
That's right. You see if you're wasting money or if you're using it irresponsibly or responsibly.
Was that the only one that you said?
Yep. that's-
Anything else?
That-
Yeah, a motion and a second.
Who seconded?
No, I didn't get a
Did you
second.
get any motion?
John made a motion.
Okay, who made the motion? We gotta rewind. Okay, do I have a motion
To acknowledge,
to acknowledge?
I make that motion.
Okay, trustee Mitchell makes a motion to acknowledge. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, I will stand for one more motion.
I move to adjourn.
I have a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.